hadn't even made it out of the cemetery gates when my phone started vibrating in my palm. The mound of dirt on my mother's grave still looked damp, like the earth hadn't yet accepted what it had just taken. My fingers were streaked with soil from touching the flowers people had left behind. My throat was raw from crying so hard I'd stopped making sound. Then the screen lit up. Unknown number. I stared at it, almost offended by the timing. Who calls someone right after they bury their mother? I should have let it ring. But something in me, some quiet instinct I couldn't name, made my thumb swipe to answer. Hello? A man's voice came through, calm and precise, like he'd rehearsed this moment. Ms. Collins, this is Daniel Reynolds. I was your mother's attorney. I stood straighter without meaning to. I'm sorry for your loss. He continued, and it didn't sound like a polite formality. It sounded like a warning dressed up as sympathy. But you need to come to my office. Today. Now, if you can manage it. My grip tightened around the phone. Is this about a will? A pause? Not a bad connection and intentional silence. I can't explain over the phone, he said carefully. But what your mother left behind will change how you understand your family. And she asked that you come alone. Alone? That single word put ice in my veins. I looked toward the parking lot. My brother Ethan was already by his car, scrolling his phone like he'd been waiting for the funeral. To end the way people wait for an overdue meeting to wrap up. Okay, I whispered, even though my mouth had gone dry. I'm coming. The call ended, and I remember thinking, this isn't paperwork. This is something else entirely. My name is Harper Collins. And for most of my life, I convinced myself my family was normal. Not perfect. Not warm and wholesome like something from a movie. Just typical. People argue. People distance themselves. People come together when it counts. That's what I told myself. My mother's funeral was on a gray Tuesday morning. The kind of gray that makes the world feel quieter than it should. The sky hung low and heavy, like it couldn't decide whether to rain or just watch. The cemetery smelled like wet grass and cut flowers. That scent still hits me sometimes and makes my stomach twist. I stood at the front, hands locked together so tight my knuckles ached, staring at the casket as if looking long enough could reverse the whole thing. Margaret Collins. My mother was the kind of woman you softened a room without demanding attention. She didn't fight. She negotiated with silence. She apologized as a reflex, even when she was the one being hurt. Seeing her name carved into stone felt like a typo. The universe refused to correct. People came to me one after another. She was so kind. Your mom helped me when I had nobody. I'm so sorry, Harper. I nodded. Thank them. Did all the things you do when your body is upright, but your mind is somewhere far away. And then there was Ethan. My brother stood off to the side, near an old oak tree, separate from everyone like he was observing a scene instead of losing a parent. His suit looked expensive and untouched by grief. He scrolled his phone, thumb moving like he was killing time. I tried not to judge him. People grieve differently, right? But real grief has weight. Ethan looked weightless. When the pastor spoke about my mother's patience, her generosity, her habit of putting everyone else first, I felt myself break all over again. And Ethan sighed, actually sighed. When the casket lowered into the ground, I reached for my brother's hand without looking. Pure muscle memory from childhood. He didn't take it. He checked his watch. That's when something cold slid into my stomach, a feeling I didn't have words for yet. After the service, people lingered in small clusters, reluctant to leave. I stayed near the grave accepting hugs, listening to stories I'd never heard, each one sharpening the loss. Ethan only approached when most people had already gone. You okay? He asked. His voice was flat, like he was asking about the weather. I stared at him, waiting for emotion to catch up to his face. I don't know, I said. I don't think it's real yet. He nodded, eyes drifting toward the parking lot. Yeah, long morning. That was it. No, I miss her. No memory. No. We'll get through this. Just logistics. I hugged him. Anyway, because that's what you do when your world collapses you. Reach for what's familiar. His body stayed rigid. His arms barely returned the gesture. Ethan, I whispered, my voice cracking. She's gone. He pulled away immediately, glancing around as if grief might embarrass him in public. Harper, don't start. He muttered. We'll deal with everything later. Double quotes everything. The word lodged in my head like a splinter. What do you mean, everything? I asked. He hesitated for half a second, then forced a thin smile. Paperwork, house stuff, just the practical things. Then he walked away, and I stood there staring at the dirt, watching the flowers tremble in the wind, thinking something I didn't want to. It feels like he's already moved on. I didn't know yet it wasn't. Indifference. It was urgency. That's when my phone rang. Unknown. Number. And then Daniel Reynolds telling me to come. Alone. As I walked toward my car. My mind tried to make it normal. Maybe mom changed her will. Maybe she forgot to sign something. Maybe it's just a bank account. But my stomach wouldn't unclench. Halfway across the lot, Ethan called my name. Harper. I turned. He was by his car, keys in hand. Where are you going? He asked. I hesitated. Just a beat too long. An errand, I said, forcing a shrug. His eyes narrowed slightly. What kind of errand? Just something I need to handle. He studied my face like he was reading a document he didn't trust. You want me to come? He asked. The words sounded polite. The tone didn't. I said too quickly. I'm fine. Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, irritation, suspicion. It vanished just as fast. All right, he said. Call me later. I got in my car and drove away. In the mirror, Ethan was still standing there, watching me leave. Daniel's office was too quiet, like the building itself was constructed to keep secrets. He didn't immediately offer me a seat. He closed the blinds halfway, then turned back, measuring me with a careful expression. Before we begin, he said, I need you to understand. Everything I'm about to show you is documented and verified. My throat tightened. He slid a thin folder across the desk. Inside were bank summaries, email printouts, notes. And handwriting I knew instantly, my mother's rounded, careful cursive. Like every sentence was asking permission to exist. I don't understand, I said. Daniel folded his hands. Your mother believed she was being controlled, he said. The word hit me wrong. Too harsh, too dramatic for my family. Controlled how? Financially, emotionally, gradually. He pointed at highlighted transactions. For the last 6 years, Ethan had access to most of her accounts. It began as help, but the help became dependency. My mind flashed with moments I hadn't questioned before. Ethan handles that. I'm terrible with money. Don't worry about it. Harper. Daniel tapped a page. Your mother started noticing withdrawals she couldn't explain. Transfers she didn't authorize. I swallowed hard. Did she confront him? She tried, Daniel said softly. He slid forward one of her notes. I don't want to upset him. He gets irritated when I ask questions. That sentence was my mother in one line, fear disguised as peace. Daniel's voice stayed steady. Harper, control doesn't always look like yelling. Sometimes it looks like constant correction. Let me do it. You'll mess it up. You need me. My chest tightened as memories reshaped themselves. My mother lowering her voice when Ethan entered a room. Ending calls abruptly. Smiling too quickly when he looked her way. How long was this happening? I asked. Longer than she admitted to herself, Daniel said. She didn't want conflict. She didn't want you caught in the middle. I stared down at her handwriting, my vision blurring. She never told me. I whispered. She was trying to protect you, Daniel replied. And she was trying quietly to protect herself. Then he added, and there's more. Daniel stood, walked to a locked cabinet, and opened it with a small key. The click of the lock sounded too loud in the silence. He returned holding to folders and placed them on the desk like weights. There are 2 wills, He said. I blinked. That's not normal. It's not common, he admitted. But it is legal. And in this case, it was deliberate. He tapped the first folder. This is the will already submitted for probate. My hands shook as I opened it. It was clean, simple, and brutal. Ethan inherited nearly everything. The house, the savings, the accounts. My name appeared once attached to my mother's jewelry. The air left my lungs. This is what Ethan believes is the only will, Daniel said. Believes? I echoed. Daniel slid the second folder toward me, because this is the one your mother never wanted him to find. I opened it and felt my heartbeat climb into my throat. This version didn't hand money to either of us directly. Instead, it placed most of her estate into a protective trust with oversight, restrictions, and safeguards designed to prevent one person from taking control again. And the trustee named at the top was Harper Collins. I don't understand, I said, voice breaking. Why me? Daniel's answer was quiet. Because she believed you would be fair. Because you wouldn't confuse love with ownership. I kept reading. The trust required independent review for any major withdrawals. It blocked unilateral transfers. It removed Ethan's access completely. Attached was a letter in my mother's handwriting. Daniel nodded. She asked that you read it now. I unfolded the paper, hands trembling. Harper, if you're reading this, I finally did what I was afraid to do. I love your brother, but love should never feel like fear. I stayed quiet because I thought silence kept the family together. Now I know silence only makes the strongest person in the room stronger. I chose you not because you're tougher, but because you are fair. Protection isn't punishment. It's the only way I know to keep you both safe. My hands dropped into my lap. So Ethan doesn't know. I whispered. No, Daniel said. And I strongly advise he doesn't hear it from you first. Why? Because when this is submitted, Daniel replied, it triggers a dispute. And based on your mother's records, it may become hostile. Hostile. I remembered Ethan at the funeral checking his watch, rushing to handle everything. He wasn't moving on. He was moving fast. Daniel leaned forward. Harper, your mother built this trust expecting resistance. The law supports it, but Ethan will fight. I swallowed hard. Then Daniel asked the question that made my stomach turn. Are you prepared to stand by her decision if it puts you directly against your brother? I stared at my mother's handwriting again, steady, determined. The opposite of how I'd always imagined her in her final years. I don't feel ready, I said. Then I lifted my eyes. But I'm not going to undo what she suffered in silence to create. Daniel nodded once. Then, this is where it begins. Ethan didn't wait long. That night, barely a few hours after I left Daniel's office, someone knocked on my apartment door. Not a polite knock. 3 sharp strikes. Controlled and confident. I knew it was him before I even reached the handle. I breathed the way Daniel told me to. Stay calm. Say little. Don't negotiate with intimidation. I opened the door. Ethan stood there wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Hey, Harp, he said lightly. You didn't answer my calls. I was busy, I replied. He stepped inside without asking, scanning my apartment like he was assessing property. Then he loosened his tie and spoke like this was nothing more than a casual chat. Daniel Reynolds. He said, interesting guy. My stomach clenched. You talked to him? Of course I did. Ethan chuckled. He said he saw you today, and he wouldn't tell me what you discussed. His gaze narrowed, which is strange, since I'm handling Mom's estate. There it was ownership disguised as duty. I don't think that's true anymore. I said. The room went still. Ethan's smile froze. What do you mean? He asked. Mom made other arrangements. His face twitched just once, then he recovered, voice softening like he was speaking to someone confused and fragile. Harper. Mom wasn't herself near the end. Even the doctors mentioned cognitive decline. I stared at him. No, I said. She wasn't confused. She was scared. The softness vanished. Scared of what? He snapped. I met his eyes. You. The word landed like a door slamming shut. Ethan stepped closer. Jaw tight. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious situation, I said. One she documented. He shook his head like I was a disappointment he'd seen coming. You're letting a lawyer fill your head with nonsense. I'm listening to Mom, I replied. Ethan's voice dropped, controlled and cold. Careful. Harper. There it was. Not shouting. Not violence. But a threat wrapped in a whisper. Careful of what? I asked. Of pushing this into places you don't understand, he said. Lawyers digging. People asking questions. Things get messy. My hands trembled, but I didn't move. You don't get to scare me anymore, I said. He laughed once, humorless. You think a trust is going to stop me? I already filed the will. Daniel says it won't hold, I replied. Ethan's nostrils flared. Daniel works for whoever pays him? He worked for Mom, I said. And she planned for this? She planned for you. That was the moment his confidence cracked. You're really doing this, he said. You're choosing paperwork over your brother. No, I said, voice breaking. I'm choosing safety over silence. Ethan backed toward the door, putting that false smile back on like armor. Fine, he said. Do it your way. He opened the door, then paused without turning around. Oh, and Harper? I didn't answer. Don't expect this to end quietly. The door shut, and I sank onto my couch, shaking, because I finally understood. This wasn't about money. It was about power, how it hides inside families, how it pretends to be love, how it thrives in silence. I barely slept that night. By morning, fear had hardened into something else entirely. Resolve. I called Daniel before 8. I'm ready, I said as soon as he answered. Whatever comes next. Daniel didn't waste time. That day he filed an emergency motion with probate court submitting the trust and requesting an immediate injunction. The language was clinical, but the meaning was clear. Ethan's access stopped. Immediately. No withdrawals. No transfers. No more. I'm handling it. For the first time in years, my mother's finances were protected even after death. That afternoon, a court-appointed advocate met with us. A woman with kind eyes and a firm, unshakable voice. This isn't a normal inheritance dispute, she said. This is potential undue influence and financial exploitation. Hearing it labeled out loud made my stomach twist. Exploitation. That word always sounded like strangers in news stories, not my brother, not my family. But she explained how it happens quietly. No bruises. No screaming. Just erosion. She didn't lose her autonomy all at once, the advocate said. It was taken in pieces. I nodded, throat tight. Ethan was notified that evening. He called me 3 times. I didn't answer. 2 days later, we sat in court. It wasn't dramatic the way movies make it seem. No shouting. No gasps from the gallery. Just fluorescent lights, wooden benches, and a judge who listened like she'd heard every version of I was only trying to help 1,000 times before. Daniel laid out my mother's notes, the transactions, the pattern of control. Ethan's attorney argued she was confused, that Ethan was a devoted son, that this was all a misunderstanding. Born of grief. I watched Ethan throughout. He didn't look nervous. He looked offended, as if the real crime here was anyone daring to question him. The judge's ruling was measured and steady. This court finds sufficient basis to uphold the protective trust pending full review. The injunction remains in place. Just like that, the balance shifted. Outside the courtroom, Ethan cornered me in the hallway. This is insane, he hissed. You're making Mom into a victim. She was a victim, I said quietly. He stared at me like he couldn't believe I'd said it out loud. You think the court knows her better than I did? I think the court listened to her, I replied, which is more than you ever did. That's when anger finally surfaced in him, sharp, but controlled. You're destroying this family. I shook my head. Slowly. I'm telling the truth. He turned and walked away without another word. Weeks passed, and the audit deepened. An external reviewer traced years of activity, transfers that didn't match any, bills, withdrawals that made no sense. My mother's money moving like it belonged to someone else. Each update hit me in a different place. Not just grief. Betrayal. Daniel kept repeating the same sentence like a lifeline. You didn't create this. You're responding to it. Some nights guilt still tried to crawl back in. Ethan was my brother. The kid who taught me to ride a bike. The person who used to split Halloween candy with me like it was a sacred ritual. But then I'd remember my mother's letter. Love should never feel like fear. And the guilt would reshape itself into clarity. The final hearing was on a freezing Monday morning. I almost didn't go. I stood in my bathroom staring at my reflection, trying to recognize who I'd become in just 1 month. Not older exactly. Just heavier, like someone had placed a truth on my shoulders and my body hadn't adjusted to the weight yet. The courtroom was fuller this time. Monitors, representatives, the advocate, Ethan's attorney. Ethan sat rigid and composed, hands folded, confident the way entitled people are always confident. The judge entered. This court is prepared to rule. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might be sick. She summarized the findings in a calm, methodical voice. A clear evidence of financial irregularities, sustained pressure over multiple years, undue influence during a period of vulnerability. Then she said the sentence I will never forget. This case is not about intent alone. It is about impact. And then the protective trust is upheld in full. Ethan's head snapped up. The previously submitted will is invalidated due to documented undue influence. A ripple of whispers moved through the room. Ethan's mouth opened, but his lawyer grabbed his arm. The judge continued. Ethan Collins is permanently prohibited from exercising control over these assets. The trust will remain under ongoing independent oversight. The gavel came down. And with that sound, something inside me finally let go. Outside the courtroom, Ethan faced me one last time, eyes sharp with bitterness. This is what you wanted, he said. You took everything. I shook my head, exhausted beyond words. I took nothing. I protected what she asked me to protect. You humiliated me, he snapped. You isolated her, I replied. We stared at each other, siblings by blood, strangers by truth. You'll regret this, he said. And then he walked away, posture stiff, pride still intact. That's when I realized something that chilled me to my core. Ethan didn't feel guilt. He felt the loss of control. After the ruling, things moved quickly. Accounts restructured, oversight implemented, formal notices issued. And Ethan vanished from my life. No calls, no texts, no apology, no explanation. Friends asked me if I felt relieved. I never knew how to answer. Relief sounds too much like happiness. What I felt was mourning. Not only for my mother, for the family I thought I had. That night, I sat alone and reread my mother's letter for what must have been the 100th time. Protection isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's the only form of love left. For the first time, I didn't cry at that line. I just breathed, because I finally understood it. In the weeks that followed, life got quieter in a way that felt unfamiliar. No court dates, no urgent emails from Daniel, just space. At first, that space was unbearable, like walking through an emptied house where the furniture used to be your identity. I spent time at my mother's home, now truly hers in a way it never was while she lived in it. I opened windows she always kept closed. I moved things she used to say she'd get to someday. I found tiny notes tucked in drawers, shopping lists, reminders, small unfinished thoughts, ordinary things that felt sacred now. When I reviewed the trust documents again, I realized my mother didn't leave me wealth the way people imagine inheritance. She left me responsibility, and a chance to turn pain into protection. A portion of the trust-funded counseling services and legal advocacy for people experiencing family financial abuse because my mother knew how invisible that kind of suffering can be. It felt right. Not triumphant. Grounded. One morning, I went back to the cemetery alone. The grass around her grave had grown thicker. The earth had settled. The world kept moving forward, indifferent and steady. Someone had left fresh flowers. I didn't recognize the name on the card. I knelt and brushed dirt from the headstone, tracing her name with my fingertips. "I heard you," I whispered, and I didn't stay quiet. The wind moved gently through the trees above me, and for the first time since the funeral, my chest didn't feel crushed. It felt settled, because I finally understood something my mother tried to live by, even when it cost her everything. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the absence of fear. Healing didn't arrive in a single moment. It still comes unevenly, some days strong, some days fragile, some days barely there at all. There are days I still get angry, days I still wonder how I didn't see it sooner. But I don't question one thing anymore. I did the right thing. And if you take anything from my story, let it be this: family does not excuse. Control. Love does not require fear. Speaking up isn't. Betrayal sometimes it's the only way to survive. My mother didn't get the peace she deserved while she was alive, but she found the courage to speak in the only way she thought she could. And because I chose to listen, her voice didn't end at the grave. It became a boundary. It became protection. And it became the beginning of the life I'm finally allowed to live.